John Robert McIntyre, Jr., Colonel, United States Air Force, retired. So I entered in that group, and I was sent that. I went down to Ellington Air Force Base in Houston, south of Houston, Texas, for Navigator training. I didn't qualify for pilot training, but Navigator was a flying position, so I wanted, if I was going to be in the Air Force, I wanted to get on a crew and have the experience of flying, even though I didn't think I'd do that all my life. Getting to Ellington, there are some things we had to learn. The Navy wears their caps indoors, and the Air Force takes them off as soon as you enter the building. So we were constantly being told to take your cap off, your cover off. Little things like that. The Air Force was still a new service. It was 56, and the Air Force had only been around since 47. I'm 9 years old. They were still in a transition for uniforms even. They had blue uniforms, they had brown uniforms, they had a mixture. They hadn't settled on the Air Force blue standard uniform they have now. So I was in the service when pretty much all those issues were resolved. We went through a ground school for a number of weeks, teaching us basic DR, dead reckoning on charts and things like that, where you just take a given wind and plot where you thought you'd be based on the predicted wind. And that's another thing we had to learn was ships in the Navy, you didn't really pay that much attention to wind at sea. You followed your course, and wind only affected you if you're in port trying to get into a berthing position or something. But Air Force, the wind was the big thing. The wind really moved your airplane around. And so it was a new consideration for us. We had navigation training in the Navy, but this was totally different. And we had ground school, as I said. After a certain number of weeks, we flew our first missions. I remember that first mission was over West Texas somewhere, and it was bumpy. I had never been in an airplane that was that bumpy. And trying to write and breaking the pencil on the lead on your pencil, and just bouncing around, and with a cup, so you could throw up a little bit with one hand and working with the other hand. Something that you got used to, and you didn't get affected by air sickness after a few times, but it was like, I guess, like you get your sea legs too at sea. But then you learn they use the different instruments which they provided, handheld instruments where you take the stars and at night have to go out and practice picking out the constellations. And so we actually shot the stars and plotted them, and nowadays that sounds like ancient stuff, but in those days there wasn't a whole lot, especially at Dover when you're going to Europe. Later when I was assigned to Dover, you'd take off and you'd be over water the whole way, and frequently all the stars might be the only thing you had. If you could see the sky, I would see the stars up there. A lot of times you were in a suit, you really didn't have a whole lot. Not a lot of technical stuff. It was, we had radar, and we had long-range navigation, LORAN, and radio beacons, and the stars. That was basically it. We learned our training aircraft were T-29s, Convair T-29s. They take about 12 Navigator students in the back, and then they had little bubbles on top. You had these handheld sextants I was talking about to shoot the stars. Then when I went to Dover, we were in C-124s, the large transports.